Okay, so we're now live. So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee for June 6, 2018. We'll follow our standard agenda, just starting with announcements. Does anybody have any announcements for this week?
I do. Well, Richard Lau did in the issue tracker. Wanted everybody to know that there is a proposal to fold the postmortem working group into the diagnostics working group. This is Node.js post-mortem issue number 48. It is, yeah. And thanks for typing while I talk, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
And yeah, so
everyone,
take a look at that.
Hello.
I'm Mateo. We're in the announcements portion.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, yeah, that's something that's been open quite a while. Our plan is to actually make it happen next week unless somebody objects. So good as a heads up. Any other announcements?
It might make sense to use this opportunity to call out that we're doing a security release next week.
Good point. Yes, there's planned security release for June 12th. So everybody, I guess, be ready to for when that happens.
Another thing, the call for proposal for Node.js closes this Sunday. So that's the last shot. So if you want to come and speak at Node.js and maybe be presented on our stage, please send your proposal in.
Okay, any other announcements?
The V8 6.7 release is going to come out. I don't know when, but I don't know if it has been announced yet, so just done. So that one will fix the ASCII cook problem, so it's probably very important that we communicate it to the rest of the Node crowd.
What was that?
Yeah, I didn't quite catch it either.
There is a new release of Node that might have been assembling. It will be probably 10.4, which has the new V8 6.7, which the fix for async cooks and async await. So if you have been waiting for that, it will be released in the next few days.
Okay, so basically a version which fixes the problems with async hooks. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Any other announcements? No? Okay. So if that's all of our announcements, we'll move on to the agenda. So the first item on the agenda is worker initial implementation 20876. Anna, did you add that to the agenda?
I did not. It was John Dalton.
Can I request that we actually we go first to the issue that Jordan and Bradley are here for, so that we can unless there's a reason not to, so we can give them back their time as quickly as we can.
Right. I was just about to say it makes more sense to do the workers issue. It's 2 minutes after that anyway, depending on how that one goes. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So which one? That's the next one or some other one? It's
some other one. It's proposal add all new core modules under a scope, number 389 in the TSC repo.
Okay. So let's move to that one. Did you add that to the agenda, Rich? You want to kick it off?
I probably did. Let me. I think we talked about it at the summit. We've been talking about it up until then, and then it affects the workers thing. But then also Bradley proposed a MIME module, which may or may not happen, but if it does happen, we're going to want to add it under a scope. And I kind of think that maybe we should really be aggressively driving towards a conclusion on this issue. And with that, I would prefer to turn it over to Jordan and Bradley to articulate some things, and then maybe some other folks.
Sure. This is Jordan. Hi. So basically, this came up when HTTP2 was imminent, and one of the things I maintain is Resolve, which maintains a list of core modules by node version. And I became aware of it because someone filed an issue asking, one of the dependencies of Resolve was not working properly with the HTTP2 module because it didn't know it was core. And so I basically raised the question is, can we stop can we find a more kind of a deterministic way to, place to put new core modules, partially to avoid conflict. So someone who had, with HTTP2, the ecosystem conflict was explicitly and directly resolved by working with the maintainer of that package. But, in the future, because NPM is a bare word namespace, we might not have that option. And then separately, my selfish goal is that the implementation in Resolve could drop from a hard-coded list of modules to, does this module name start with something, or something very simple and clear. And so as part of the discussion around HTTP2, the general feeling was that it should not block HTTP2 and that the work had been done. I don't know if there's someone talking in the background on something.
Yeah, can someone mute Sakta Priyan? Power to do that? That would probably be Michael.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me. Who is it that you think is noisy in the back?
The fourth eye.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks. Go on, Jordan.
Okay,
I do think we're probably not going to want to recap the entire issue here, but yeah,
I can sum up then. But yeah, so essentially, the first thing that should be decided is this a problem that we think needs solving? Do we need to namespace core modules somehow? And then if we agree that we do, then the kind of separate question is, how should we do that? There's if we pick something that does overlap with NPM, namely scoped modules, we can easily pick a scope that Node owns and therefore avoid any future collision problems. That opens the door to polyfillability and users being able to override, or to use overrides in the way that Browserify and Webpack does. They have a core module. They have a Node modules module that can be a browser polyfill for the core module, things like that. Another set of alternatives is coming up with something that couldn't exist on the file system. The upsides is that then nobody can monkey with it. The downsides is that then it can never be polyfilled, and it may overlap with, may conflict with the way browsers do path resolution, which comes into play with the modules implementation. So my personal preference and recommendation would be that we select an NPM namespace that we own, and then everything just goes under that. And that, to me, resolves all the issues at hand and is also forward compatible with whatever modules resolution algorithm we could come up with.
So if we can, let's definitely separate those, and let's take the first question of, is this a problem we want to solve? Do we think we need to solve it? And then let's separate exactly how we do it. They're separate steps.
Yeah.
I guess another question is, do we want to solve it for future modules and kick the can down the road about whether we want to solve it for, current modules?
Right. I think that ends up going into some of the details of how. What we need is, yes, this is a problem we want to solve, or no, yes, it's a problem we want to solve. We need to have what the options on the table are and what the associated issues are.
So I'd like to note that TC39 actually has a similar problem that they're going through with respect to built-in modules for JavaScript, the language. Hosts entirely control module specifiers right now. So there are internal discussions within TC39, and there have been meetings about how to approach built-in modules there. There isn't much leeway. There are open issues about should it occupy the string import specifiers for built-ins, but there doesn't seem to be anything about reserving based upon protocol currently for the JavaScript import specifier parsing. There is an open discussion about matching NPM scopes, but that's fairly recent. I don't know of any parser problems between WhatWG import specifiers and Node's ESM import specifiers if you do npm scopes. But if you take up a protocol, like Jordan said, it becomes a very special snowflake that we can't really ever polyfill easily across systems. So.
And with respect to TC39 stuff, there's a lot of competing constraints such that I think it's unrealistic to expect anything to come from TC39 for quite a while. And it's possible that that any sort of built-in modules is also an untenable direction. That's a very real possibility. So I don't think that Node should wait on what might come out from the language, as long as we pick something that is not knowingly incompatible with, with something that might come in the future.
So I'm sorry, I don't see the raise hand option, and I can't tell if anybody else has
that said, there would be absolutely nothing stopping us today. I can do it.
I would like to hear from Matteo, because I think he's the person who was of the people here, at least. I think he's the person who's been most resistant to the idea of scoping, and so it'd be good to get that stuff out into the discussion.
So one of the things that's not going to work with the proposal of doing an npm scope, and it will be very confusing.
You're breaking up.
Yeah.
We aren't able to hear.
We seem to have lost Matteo.
Oh, well, does someone want to read his comments in the issue tracker and try to summarize it? Oh, there he is.
Oh, I am. Sorry.
Yep.
Yes, so that was my point. So that's about it. And,
sorry, Matteo. We didn't hear you that whole time,
okay,
so
sorry,
you'll have to start again.
So what happened is that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So the whole discussion, it comes about how the ecosystem works with that scope. So you can't reuse those modules with that scope in mind. It's a major problem if you start doing that. So if you decide that Node.js is something that we want to use, that's going to be there. Also, the moment we start introducing and pushing Node.js for all core modules, what will happen is that all core modules will those will have a 3-year cycle to get in. So because we were releasing it in a minor release, but we don't, even if we backport, people keep using old version of Node. So if all of this, it's a 3-year cycle if you want to plan to migrate everything to Node.js. That's my main concern. That's my main concern. So that's about it.
Right.
And,
what I didn't quite catch your first point. That what was the major problem if you use the npm namespace?
I am probably on a bad connection, so I'm quitting myself from many objections. Sorry, I can't talk about it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, from what I heard, I just raised my hand. I don't know if this is the decorum.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead.
So from what I heard from Matteo's comment, one of the things that jumped out to me was he's saying a 3-year cycle to get the namespace into Node, but adding, as long as Node owns the namespace on npm, to me we could call that assembler minor and backport it immediately for all core modules if we so decided to, every currently supported version of Node. And it would be very trivial, and I'd be happy to volunteer to maintain that, to make a polyfill for all the core modules that would work down to like Node 0.4, because it's really just a matter of putting stuff on disk that re-exports the existing core module.
Yes, but it creates a lot of confusion. So if we're going to do this, we can, but we should not be changing any form of our documentation until more or less a 3 years time frame, whenever we are not supporting a version of Node where the .0.0 release didn't have this feature in. Because otherwise people look at the documentation for Node 8, but they might not get the fact that that thing is available or not. So that's more or less my take. New modules can go in a new scope. I do not object on that anymore.
I mean, is that not the same problem with any Semper minor? Like anything that's added in Node 10 isn't going to be available in Node 8, and they have to know they're looking at the right documentation.
The major problem is that it's ecosystem usage. So if I want to do a module, and typically on Travis, you test on the latest version of all the LTS releases. So I can definitely write a tiny module that passes the test with the latest release, but using the new Node.js/fs syntax, but it won't really pass on an older version of that thing, causing ecosystem complexities in general. All the other, we can mitigate this as much as we want, but it's just going to create stress in the community. That's my main objection. There are also some tiny, might be security related issues related to the fact that, people can be confused with the add syntax. So they might want to install that and so on and so forth. But that's, those are probably minor.
So
the major. No, I'm done.
Okay. Now Bradley had his hand up as well. Was
Okay.
that recently, Bradley?
if you're talking, you're muted, Bradley.
Oh, they're good, maybe. So it's good to hear that new modules aren't really opposed to having a namespace, but that still means we have to decide on having a namespace, and we haven't really even come to that conclusion. But I also want to make an argument about consistency. Even if there is increased number of aliases to any given module, having a consistent way of doing things so that you don't have @Node.js/mime as some errant, unique module that had to be namespaced for whatever reason, would be ideal. Having consistency across the board is something that I think should be valued because, like Jordan was saying, these are mostly just, redirecting what you're importing to the one without the namespace for existing modules. We don't have to update the documentation for things to all use @Node.js/fs or any of that. I don't think anybody is in a rush to do that until all the release lines are supporting this feature. But I would like whatever it is to be done consistently, not to be one-offs for specific modules.
I agree.
Right. So pick one namespace and then that namespace is used for all new modules. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but not just all new modules. We also alias all the old modules to add Node.js/something, even if we do not document them.
Okay. Now, LJ Harby, you had your hand up as well.
That was from before. Sorry.
Okay. That's right. Okay. And I think Rich has his hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I can't find the thing on the client to raise my hand. So, Joy, just to get this, I don't want this to be lost for the recording, but Joy had a comment that I don't think we should polyfill them on NPM. Some people use core modules because they come out of the signed binary and should be secure. With NPM, you don't have that signing story. And Jordan responded, it'd be a re-export of the Node core module. I'm not sure signatures matter there much. I wanted to suggest that, especially because we have other topics to talk about, I wanted to suggest that perhaps we can at least conclude here with the people we have here that we do, we do want to namespace future modules, at least get that resolved. So I would like to call for objections to that, or is there consensus around that first? And then there's a second thing. Go ahead, James. All right, so I guess I'm having trouble hearing James. Is anybody hearing him clearly?
No.
Okay. All right, well, let's try this. If anybody has objections, maybe type it in the chat or say something now. But no need to say anything if you agree.
So I'm not a fan of it, and it's so like for me, it's a thing of like it's probably not worth the energy of fighting. It's like, I mean, if everybody else thinks it makes sense, sure, but like for me, consistency also means that like people who are used to the understanding that they can import core modules with just require some name, that's going to keep being that way. But maybe that's just me.
So
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of it either, but
So I'm trying to figure out, does that mean you, are you saying that, you want the unscoped, I'll call it, requires to continue working forever? Or are you saying you don't, or do you mean you don't want to scope new modules either?
I think the first is kind of a given at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
So both really, but yeah.
Okay, well, then I would say that's not consensus then.
I think somebody else said something along the same lines, like maybe count it as 2 minus 0.5s, making it -1 or so.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah was the other one. Okay, in that case, we should probably.
Wait, that's not that's a lack of consensus for ever deprecating the existing ones. That doesn't sound to me like a lack of consensus for creating the new namespace.
It sounded like it to me, but maybe
Did I mishear? Maybe I misheard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really a fan of namespacing new modules, but I'm not sure if the alternatives are great either. So.
Right, I'm in that same position.
Okay, so just to make, go ahead, Bradley.
I'm just trying to get not phrasing with I'm a fan or I'm not a fan. I'm just trying to understand, are you opposed? Like, are you trying to prevent namespaces at this point in time?
I would be if there seemed to be any other better option.
So I would propose that we just instead of don't try to parse that out and just. I was going to move to say that I would move for a vote in the actual issue. Just that would be my inclination. But go ahead, Anna.
I mean, I guess a vote makes sense at this point because, like, it's hard to bring actual arguments for, like, keep doing it the way we're doing it so far. I mean, like, in the past, we've had the experience that, like, getting modules from people who own them on NPM is not all that hard, except for, like, me when I went with Worker. I mean, like, I guess that on the one side, that doesn't really scale. On the other side, well, I mean, like, do we want core modules to scale?
Are there going to be enough of them that it's worth getting the namespace versus just managing with it every time it comes up?
Okay, right. So I think it makes sense to, like, put a vote on the question, should we namespace new modules?
Do you want to? Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so I think let's move on because we do have other things. So let's say next step is vote an issue, right?
Yeah, and I'm happy to take that on unless someone else wants it.
There are some comments on the chat. So one of the things that we said was that we might want, first of all, somebody that huge proponents do a pro and cons document that explains this clearly. And so we can say yes or no to that proposal.
Are you volunteering to put that together?
I don't have any times, so I'm most of on the con side of that discussion. So I'm happy to help filling out the con, really, but I cannot commit to both to do this. So I ask if that document can be prepared by one of the proponents of this specific point.
Because I guess we need a volunteer to put that together, if that's going to be one of the requirements.
Everybody can edit the Google Doc. So
So I guess you're asking then, so basically we delay by a week to get people to enter things into that Google Doc and then have the vote. Is that the way forward? Matteo, is that? Okay, it sounds like Matteo is, it sounds like Joy is creating one. Maybe that, Rich, does that sound okay to you if we basically say we'll give an amount of time to create the pro and cons before the vote starts?
Sure. I mean, I feel like the issue tracker is that document, but yeah, let's go ahead and summarize.
Yeah, it's not summed up enough to call for a vote. That's my case.
There's a bit of noise in the issue tracker thread that's making it.
Okay, so I think that's the way forward. Let's move on to the next issue because we are running out of time.
So it might make sense to like put the issue that we skipped in the beginning now, which is like the workers implementation, because like that is the only question that's left open there. Like it's currently the module worker _ threads, which is not taken and cannot be taken on NFPM, and it's like, I want to know, can I merge this PR at this point? It's experimental, it's behind the flag, but I would also not be a fan of changing it again later. It's like, yeah, are there any objections to me landing that PR?
I would object only if you're opposed to changing it later, because we might not want to land new modules unscoped. Although I understand what you're saying about it cannot be taken on. Well, that's something to consider. It can't be taken.
Are you saying that we might not want to land new modules at all?
No, until we've resolved the. I think it's a question about landing them before we've resolved whether they're going to namespace or not.
Yes.
Does it matter if it's experimental though?
It does. Well, Anna says she wouldn't want to change it. So
I would not be a fan of changing it. But like if the TSC is of the opinion that we should change it to a new name, yeah, I mean like.
Well, I think most likely it would be that if we decide to namespace, then we'd want new modules to be going into that namespace, and so that's why it would be changed.
Right.
So same name, but under the namespace would be my guess.
I
push it off.
I don't think we need to discuss this here, because I think we already discussed about how existing modules, if this is already merged before the namespace decision, would still be available under their current name.
But one of the things that was discussing during the original post before HTTP2 landed, the general consensus in that thread was HTTP2 will be the last module before this is resolved, and then no one's resolved it, and now there are 2 more core modules being suggested. And so we can keep playing the game of like, let's just sneak in more core modules until we've resolved the issue, but that doesn't actually resolve the issue.
So,
James, no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We can't. Whoever's
Yeah.
Muted,
James, just type.
Yeah, we can't hear. Okay, so James typed in, what about exposing it a different way, for example, through util temporarily?
I would prefer doing it this way, even if it's temporary. Because like putting it on util just like does not make any sense to me.
And waiting a week is not really something you want to do.
I mean, like, not really, no.
Yeah, I'm kind of on what Rich said. I don't mind it landing, but don't think willing to commit to not wanting to change it later yet.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm asking like, can I merge this as it is, and we can talk later about like whether we're going to rename it or not.
Yeah, if it's behind a flag, that's fine with me. I would, and then if we decide all new modules have to be namespaced, I would probably be opposed to landing it without namespacing it first without the flag. But while it's behind a flag, that's fine, in my opinion.
I'm in agreement with that too.
I also agree.
Does anybody object to that?
As long as it doesn't get, like, is the plan to release it when?
It's December minor, so it could go into the next 10.x release behind a flag.
Do we need to backport it to 10x?
We don't, but I also see no reason not to. Like having it in the release line is a pretty good way to get feedback, right?
Yeah, 10x behind a flag is totally fine. I don't want to rush this, but at the same time, I know we have Ruben here for an issue, and then we have another person coming on for something else. So.
I mean, like I didn't hear any objections to landing this behind a flag. We can talk about everything later, right?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, unless anybody wants to object, I think that's where we are.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on to the next issue, which was recover from maximum stack size 20725. And I'm just opening to see who added it, unless somebody is here who added it and wants to.
I think it was Ruben.
Okay, so Ruben, do you want to start the discussion?
Although he might be on a noisy bus, he might need to type. We'll find out.
Okay.
Ruben, you're muted.
We just got off the bus, so hopefully the audio will be better.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so in general, I created GPR because it is, out of my perspective, a bad user experience that when you set the limit to anything arbitrary big, then you could, in theory, end up with a error, and util inspect is a debugging tool, so it should pretty much bring the best experience possible to the user. It is super rare that anyone would really do that or want to have in the case that someone wants to inspect an object of that size or that depth, because it would actually have an immense white space in there and you couldn't really read it anymore. So it's an edge case, and it just felt natural to me that we shouldn't throw an error. I'm totally fine with the comment that Anna has in there about right now it's still emitting an error. Emitting a warning in case the maximum call stack size is actually reached, and instead just adding that information to the logged object itself. So yeah, Brian was against it. I don't really have a lot other ways to say about it.
Yeah, it has
mainly about user. Huh? Sorry.
Go ahead, Ruben. Finish up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's only about user experience, and that we should not throw in these cases, out of my perspective.
Yeah, and it has 8 other approvals, I think, 7 of which are TSC folks. It's a relatively short thread, and I was kind of hoping that we could, that enough people would have read through it that we can resolve this today quickly. But it would need, it does seem like we'd need a vote because Brian objects, and so it basically can't land unless the TSC decides to break the impasse. So with that said, is it time for a vote, or do people need to look at this?
We have quorum here, right? Because like this is very simple.
Yeah. Yes, we have quorum here. Yes.
And if we do, I would prefer to vote.
So, Rich, you proposing a vote?
Yes, I'm proposing a vote, and I will. Yeah, everybody. Actually, I want everybody. Yeah, put the votes in the chat so that they're logged and we don't have to listen. But it looks pretty good.
I don't have access to the chat.
Okay. +1, -1, or no opinion. Nikita, do you have an opinion on this?
Yes. Could you repeat the question again, just to confirm that?
Should this pull request land?
Okay, give me a moment.
Given the votes that are already in the chat, this can land. I don't want to refrain. I don't want anybody to refrain from lodging their vote, but there are 9 yes votes and 2 abstentions, which, given that there are 18 people on the TSC, that's enough for this to land.
Okay. Can you take
I will abstain for now.
You will abstain. Okay, great.
Okay, so Rich, if you can take the action to capture that and add it to the issue.
Yes, I will add it to the issue as well as to the Google Doc minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I think at this point we're beyond our. Well, we need to reserve some time for the private section at the end. So unless there's any other business that I think the people feel we have to cover, I think we should move to that.
I agree.
So anybody else who has things think we need to cover?
Okay, thanks, Joe. I'll say goodbye in this case.
Okay, thanks. Okay, if we can ask all of the guests to drop out, and I'm going to stop the live stream.